From London, this is the Standard Podcast, and I'm Mark Blunden. Kyiv claims Russia launched a long-range intercontinental ballistic missile for the first time in an attack on Ukraine, but that account has been disputed by US officials. The powerful weapon is believed to have been fired from Russia's southern Astrakhan region during a morning attack on Thursday. However, the ICBM claim has been disputed by the Americans, with a senior US official telling the New York Times that the weapon appeared to be an intermediate-range ballistic missile, adding, "But it is a new type that they have been tracking." The Kremlin also told reporters it had nothing to say about the hardware used in the strike. It comes after Ukraine used American Atacms and British Storm Shadow missiles to strike targets inside Russia this week, something Moscow had warned for months would be seen as a major escalation. Just hours later, Vladimir Putin approved an updated Russian nuclear doctrine, lowering the threshold for the use of nuclear strikes. Ukraine's Air Force says the Thursday Russian attack targeted enterprises and critical infrastructure in the central eastern city of Dnipro at a time of escalating moves in the 33-month-old war launched by Russia in Ukraine. The missiles can be used for delivering nuclear warheads, though they can also have conventional warheads. Reuters report it came as Ukrainian air defences shot down 6 Kh-101 cruise missiles during the attack. Now Moscow's warning that an American missile defence base in Poland was on its list of targets for what it describes as potential destruction. We'll be joined by the London Standard's defence editor Robert Fox, but first some audio just in of Defence Secretary John Healey at the Defence Committee on Thursday.
We've seen in recent weeks a very clear escalation from Putin and his forces. They've stepped up attacks on the energy system in Ukraine ahead of winter. They've stepped up attacks on civilian centres, killing children. They've deployed at least 10,000 North Korean troops to the battle front line. And there are unconfirmed but media reports today of Russia firing a new ballistic missile into Ukraine, which we know have been preparing for months. So that while the Ukrainian actions on the battlefield speak for themselves, Mr. Chairman, be in no doubt that the UK government is stepping up our support for Ukraine.
Now we're joined by the London Standard's defence editor, Robert Fox. What do we know about reports of this strike by Russia against Ukraine on Thursday?
Well, it's Kyiv Air Force. It's the Ukrainian Air Defence reporting that no doubt a missile did arrive, and it was a big one. I mean, that's very important because it's not a short-range missile or medium-range missile like Storm Shadow and the Atacms, the army missile of the US, which is being fired around the Kursk area at the moment. It is in response to that. It is very significant in that this weapon, whatever it was, undoubtedly is normally used in the order of battle for nuclear warfare. And it's a thing that you would use to launch over 1,000 kilometers, over 1,000 miles with a nuclear warhead. It also has to be said, though, we have to be careful there because they've used other medium-range missiles like the Kinzhal and the Iskander, which can also use nuclear weapons. But it is a ratcheting up. It is very much part of the Putin mind game. One, in response to what Europe and America has been doing with medium missiles, and two, into the return of Donald Trump for another presidency from January. We really don't know the designation of this ICBM. It looks as if it's a very old one, actually, and it hasn't caused much damage. It had a conventional warhead, but they've launched hypersonics with it. They launched 5 Kinzhals, which are supposed to be super duper, and they're dual use as well, and they're managing to shoot them down.
And Moscow is warning NATO bases in Poland are on the list of targets?
If it does that, it knows it's got a war with NATO. There will be members of the incoming Trump administration, I would imagine the designate Vice President Vance and the incoming Defense Secretary, who would be reluctant to respond to that. And this is going to be the real test. But there would be solidarity in much of the alliance. If Poland or Finland are attacked, or the Baltics, then that would trigger a request for a mutual response for the entire alliance to respond under Article 5. I've put it in rather legal terms because Article 5 is not generally what people assume it means. It's not the Three Musketeers. Attack on one means a response from all for one and one for all, because there are protocols of requests and circumstances, and it requires an American endorsement. That is what Russia is playing on. This is not just aimed at Ukraine. It's aimed at splitting up NATO, particularly its European partners.
Let's go to the ads. We'll be back in just a moment. In the meantime, please do give us a like and hit subscribe. Welcome back. Now, with many people's worries spiralling about the conflict, let's hear from the Prime Minister, who was directly asked at the G20 summit in Brazil if Britain should prepare for nuclear war. This was his response.
There's irresponsible rhetoric coming from Russia, and that is not going to deter our support for Ukraine. We're now on day 1,000 of that conflict. That's 1,000 days of Russian aggression, 1,000 days of sacrifice in Ukraine. We have stood with Ukraine from the start, and I've been doubling down in my clear message that we need to ensure that Ukraine has what is needed for as long as is needed to win this war against Putin.
Now back to Robert Fox. What do we know about the current size of Russia's arsenal, particularly of these larger weapons? Its capabilities, I should say.
Well, capability is a difficult thing, but we see a lot of them, of course, because we see them on parade, Victory Day, the various military ceremonies, and, of course, the securitocracy surrounding Putin, like talking about it an awful lot. We've had two things which are a significant development: forward positioning of tactical weapon systems into Belarus, which obviously overlooks both Poland and Ukraine, and also the change of what's so-called the doctrine under the terms in which they would be used. And in fact, Lavrov, but particularly Dmitry Medvedev, former president, former prime minister, very much the big mouth of the Security Council, which surrounds Putin, saying, the doctrine is that if NATO permits a launch of its weapons into Russian territory, e.g. Atacms and Storm Shadow, what you've seen, then it is legitimate for Russia to respond even up to a nuclear threshold. Now, this is dangerous talk. A lot of it is still talk at the moment, but it is very, very loose talk. And not for nothing have we got Dr. Strangelove, How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, coming into London as a musical now with Steve Coogan, because that's based on the logical illogicality of nuclear deterrence. And I think we're there again, is that it's looking very, very weird indeed as to what's going on. Russia is up to a game, but it's up to sustaining itself in this mess that it's got into Ukraine. And it's trying to face down both Ukraine and its immediate and most stalwart backers, above all in America, in Europe, and it's really Britain, France, and Germany in that order.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It might be a lot of talk, but yes, it certainly has become, as you say, weird. And people here are getting worried as well, right? What's your take on how this week has changed the nature of the conflict, and what can we expect now, and how on earth can we de-escalate this?
People, if they're worried now, they should have been worried a lot before, and I include the Starmer government in that, who have been very ambiguous because they've been playing the game of words as well, saying, we will see this through, we will do it for support Ukraine for as long as it takes, whatever that may mean. We're not going to spend any more money on defense because we haven't got the money now, and we're going to waiting for Godot for the Strategic Defense Review, which was due to come out at the end of February, now will come out at the end of the summer. This is the thing that is worrying. But the point is that the contest, it's not a hot war, but it is a confrontation, and it has a very direct influence. in that Russia has shown that it is interested and capable of disrupting supplies of information, underwater cables, possibly food supplies, certainly energy supplies. Have we all forgotten about the Houthis, who are going on gangbusters with this, with Iranian and behind them Russian technology? We are in a contest, and it does require a complete readdress and levelling with the public about what the security risks are and the resilience. That is how you can contribute by supporting public services, being aware of the dangers, the cyber attacks which can lead to outages. We've had these mysterious fires in Britain and the Allies. We've had the Russian survey ships surveying cable points in and across the Irish Sea and across the English Channel. This is where we've got to up the game. But I think the problem for UK is the Labour government do not want to face this. It is not on the Reeve-Starmer agenda, and it really should be.
And that's The Standard. For latest news, head over to standard.co.uk. This podcast is back tomorrow at 4 p.m.